Okay, so let's just get deeper into this conversation. What are some of the key challenges that developing countries face during regarding the sustainable urban development?
Hmm.
And I think you can always go into how can informatics, technology, and data analytics will help all of this.
Yeah. So I think there are two parts to this question, right? So, I mean, the first part would be what are the challenges? And then, given those challenges, how can tech basically try to, or it is it serve as an enabler for solving those challenges? Um, so, um, I mean, the challenges, especially in the developing countries. So, I can give you some statistics here as well, especially in the context of Lahore, where I live, or Islamabad, I think, where you're talking to. And so I mean, I talked about a large influx of people moving into our cities, and because of that, our cities are growing in an unplanned fashion. I mean, that results in something called urban sprawl. Um, that results in inequities with regards to access to public services. For example, I live in DHA. That's supposed to be an elite or elitist sort of an area. Yet there are large pockets of unstructured areas that you find in between, and those people living there would not have the same access to public services that we have as belonging to what socioeconomic strata we belong to. Um, Similarly, as cities expand, uh, at the right, at the edge of Lahore, somebody would take about 45 minutes to 15 minutes to drive all the way to LUMS uh, from work to home and from home to work every day, 45 minutes one way. So the issues were there for the mobility. And yeah, if I gave you some numbers, especially for the Lahore, according to Punjab Bureau of Statistics, so the number of cars from 2010 to 2020 have actually doubled in the city of Lahore. I mean, all the history combined from 2010 to 2009, they became 2x. Um, and the number of motorbikes, that actually becomes 3x, three times. So that only not only speaks that actually speaks about some socioeconomic imbalances as well, and motorbikes, how do they impact people's mobility, micro mobility in particular. But nevertheless, so that leads to congestion, that leads to with people on the road, high levels of stress, um, and and more importantly, lots and lots of air pollution and emissions. Once again, quoting some numbers from Lahore. So IQ Air, for instance, which is a Swiss company that installs that sells actually PM2.5 monitors. So PM2.5, particulate matter 2.5, are particles which have a diameter of less than 2.5 micrometers, and there's no way for our bodies to actually, or our lungs to filter them. And then once they get inside, the bloodstreams are always there. So the WHO sets a safe limit of 10 micrograms per meter cube. That's the safe limit. The PM2.5 concentrations must be less than that. Lahore in 2022 was ranked by IQ Air as the most polluted city in the world. And the concentrations of PM2.5, would you like to take a guess? What would those be in Lahore?
Maybe twice.
It's actually 10 times.
Oh,
So the concentration of PM2.5 in Lahore is 97 micrograms per meter cube, based on the study by IQ Air. Um, and Beijing, I mean, a few years ago, we've been hearing about stories how Beijing was so polluted. And the Beijing numbers are three times less than ours. So that's one of the other major issues. That's because of transportation and mobility. There's some studies which attributed majority of it to transportation, and of course there are other factors as well. Um, so these are all, if I can summarize the problems, and that's three domains we're trying to work on: is unplanned urban growth, and related to that is the issues with mobility, and of course related to that is environment as well as health. So with regards to health, there was also a study conducted by University of Chicago a couple of years ago when the concentration was not this high, and they estimated that an average Lahori would lose 6 years of their life because of air pollution. And this is in Lahore. Islamabad is not so good either. So on average for Pakistan, it was I think 3.5 years. Pakistani would lose about 3.5 years of their life. So these are the challenges that not just Pakistan faces. I think that these are world over, especially in the developing countries. So this would be, I mean, in summary, one part of that question, one answer to the part of the question, which is these are the problems, right? Now, how can technology help? Technology is not the silver bullet. I always tell whenever I'm talking to people. I mean, it has to be coupled with governance, solving issues with governance. But technology can, of course, serve as an enabler, as a crucial enabler for solving these problems. Um, so let's talk about examples, right? So environment and health, for instance, where I talked about how people lose their lives, 6 years of their life to to poor air quality. Um, how can tech help? The first thing that it can help is through fine-grained analysis of what the problem is. And until this day, we've not been able to accurately identify what are the main reasons why this high level of pollution arises. So this could be solved by spreading out a large sort of a network of sensors, which are low cost, but they're calibrated, perhaps through some model-driven, some data analytics, at a fine spatial resolution throughout the city. And through that data that comes in, you do data analytics, you do some sort of machine learning based analysis to identify what the sources of pollutions are, where it's coming from, to predict whether there's going to be hazardous air in the near future, and most importantly, to help in making decision support systems for the policymakers. And that could all be done through data analytics, all be done through, and people are working throughout the world on developing something like this. I can talk about mobility, and the first thing, for instance, you would need to find out to solve mobility problems is to figure out how do people move in a city, and where do they travel from to where? I mean, where are their homes? Where are their workplaces? What kind of transportation do they take? Do they take cars? Do they take motorbikes? How many of a percentage take motorbikes? Now, this could be done, and this has been done traditionally through surveys. I often see enumerators sitting at the side of the road, wearing yellow jackets, and they're just counting off on a piece of paper. They're actually counting traffic. That's data is actually fed but into planning purposes, should be fed into purposes. But this could be done through tech. You could use AI-driven, so from traffic cameras, for instance, that's one of the things that we're working on. Analyzing video feeds on traffic junctions to figure out where people are coming in, where they're going. Mobile phone records that has proliferated in our population, even in the developing countries. Those could be used to identify how people are moving in a city. And public transport records, for instance, and everything is digitized now. And because of that digitization, you can actually figure out where do people get into a public public transport stop, and where do they get out, and just make an estimate of how people are moving. And similarly, I mean, population density map, for instance, is crucial for any planning purposes. And the last census, for instance, we had in Pakistan was 2017. That's outdated now, and it's not publicly available data. The data for that is not publicly available either. But that is crucial for any planning purposes. And then the question is, could technology help in perhaps in developing a estimate of where the population resides, and maybe coming up with quantifiable numbers as to the number of people living per square kilometers? Yes, you could do that. Technology, we're now to a level where we have AI-based methods that could just analyze rooftops, for instance, and identify what is the size of that household, and through some other secondary data sets, maybe come up with a good estimate of the population density. Electricity consumption data, that's all digitized as well. So if you have electricity level, a meter level data for how much of an electricity is being consumed at any particular location, that gives you an idea. And there are studies out there that gives you an idea of the number of people living in that household, and as well as the socioeconomic status of the people living in that house. So you could just take the ratio of the electricity consumption during the summer months versus the electricity consumption in the winter months, and that would give you an estimate of whether they have ACs installed in the houses or not. and that's an indicator of the socioeconomic status. And there are lots and lots of other things that you could do, once again, to inform planning, inform decision making. I mean, one of the other examples I always give to people is, I mean, if I look through Lahore, I just do a Google search and figure out where the Gloria jeans are. And if you see on the map, I mean, the location of the Gloria jeans, it's really, really uncanny as to, I mean, they're either in DHA, either in, so those of you who are familiar with Lahore would know what I'm talking about. DHA, Model Town, Gulberg, there's one in Valencia, there's one in Bahria Town. There's none in the actual Lahore. There's no Gloria jean. And that gives you an implicit information about the spending power of people living in those areas. So that's the kind of things that we're trying to look into, inform planning, inform urban decision.